So Zarnota says, thank you for the money, my friend, says, hey, JJ, do you think that North American universities are becoming too progressive? Yeah, probably. I mean, like there's famous people on the right sort of cite statistics all the time where they say that, it used to be conservatives to liberals used to be 5-1. Now it's like 40-1 or 90-1 or, whatever. Like, I think it's very clear that the balance has really changed a lot. And not only has the balance changed, but like when you talk about like, well, where are the conservatives? They're pretty much now, I think, if you're finding conservative professors, they're like in the business school or perhaps the economic school. You have very few conservatives, I think, generally speaking, represented in, departments like, politics, history, anthropology, sort of sociology, sort of things like that. And I think that is negative. That is very destructive. I think it's important that universities expose kids to a bunch of a broad range of perspectives. I mean, these are very cliched things to say, but I do think that they matter. When I think of my own time in university, the best professors I had were the ones that reflected a broad range of opinions. I had a very conservative professor who I really liked, but I had a very left-wing professor who was very intelligent as well, and he was very stimulating and challenging in a way I appreciated. So, and it was kind of fun to bounce from one perspective to another. And to hear, this was, when I was in university, it was very much like at the peak of the Iraq war. And like, that was like the defining issue. And it would be interesting to me, as someone who was thinking a lot about those issues at the time, to, go to one professor's class and hear one sort of take on the war, and then go to a different professor's class and hear his take on the war, and sort of have to, reconcile these different sort of conflicting perspectives and sort of think about whose arguments were more persuasive. And I would sort of think, like, if they were debating, how would they engage with each other and that kind of stuff. And if you don't have that kind of stimulation, like if the kids today are like unaware that there are even other ways to think about problems, I think that's bad, right? Like, the thing is that when you're young, as much as we like to think like college students are very mature adults and all the rest of it, they are still very young, and they are still very deferential to adult authorities, and they are very deferential to like truth as being determined in part by what an adult authority figure tells them is true. And so if all of the adult authority figures in their life are only saying one thing, then I think that the young students are inclined to be just much less critical of it. Whereas if they are exposed to adult authority figures that say a broad range of things, then they start to realize that they have agency to determine truth on their own, and that adult authority figures are not, just these kind of like pure fonts of unadulterated wisdom, but they're sort of people that are subject to their own biases and their own limitations and their own sort of moral frames of looking at the world. And I think like that's ultimately, for growth as a young person, I think it's very important that you start to understand adult authority figures in that kind of modest way.